The pop of the cannons was deafening. Blue confetti rained down on the backyard, sticking to my hair and eyelashes. I turned to my husband, Julian, a smile stretching across my face, ready to celebrate our son. But Julian wasn't smiling. He was staring at the microphone his mother, Beatrice, had just snatched from the DJ. "Stop the music!" she shrieked, her voice cutting through the joy like a blade. She reached into her Chanel bag and pulled out a thick, sealed manila envelope. "Before we celebrate a lie," she announced to the 50 guests, staring in silence, "I think my son deserves to know the truth about what or who he's really raising." That was the moment everything I had built came crashing down. Before I tell you how I exposed her scheme and turned the tables, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. My name is Celine, and this is how I survived my mother-in-law's cruelest attack. Beatrice shoved the envelope into Julian's chest, her perfectly manicured nails pressed against the paper like claws. I did the math, Julian. The dates didn't add up, so I took the liberty of running a DNA test. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might collapse right there in front of everyone. I had never been with anyone else, not before Julian, not during our marriage, not ever. Julian tore the seal open with shaking hands. I watched the color drain from his face as he read whatever was inside. He looked at the paper, then at me, not with confusion or hurt, but with pure, raw disgust. 0%, he whispered, his voice breaking. "You tried to pass another man's child off as my son?" He crumpled the paper and threw it in my face. The bold letter stared back at me from the grass where it landed. 0% probability. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Around us, guests gasped and whispered. Phones came out. Someone was recording. This wasn't just private humiliation. It was public execution. "Julian, that's impossible," I cried, reaching for his arm desperately. He recoiled like I had burned him, jerking away so violently he nearly knocked over the gift table. "Don't touch me," he spat, his face twisted with anger I had never seen before. Beatrice stepped between us immediately, her smirk subtle but unmistakable. She had practiced that look in the mirror, I was sure of it. "I think you should leave, Celine, now, before I call security." I looked around at our friends, our family, the people we had invited to celebrate our baby boy. No one stepped forward to defend me. They all looked at their shoes, at the sky, anywhere but at me. My cousin turned her back. Julian's brother folded his arms and shook his head. In less than 5 minutes, I had lost my husband, my home, and my reputation based on a piece of paper I knew was a lie. I grabbed my purse from the gift table and walked toward the gate, my heels sinking into the grass with every step. I sat on the edge of the Motel 6 bed, staring at the stained wallpaper. It was the only place I could afford with the cash in my purse, $63 and some change. My phone was blowing up with notifications, but not messages of support. People were removing me from group chats, untagging me from photos, erasing me like I had never existed. I stared at the crumpled DNA test I had managed to grab from the lawn before fleeing. How did she get a sample? Then I remembered. 2 weeks ago at Sunday dinner, Julian had cut his finger slicing bread. Beatrice had insisted on cleaning it up, fussing over him like he was 5 years old. She had taken the tissue with her when she left. She had planned this. She had been waiting for the perfect moment to destroy me, the gender reveal party with everyone watching. Maximum humiliation, maximum damage. I lay back on the rough sheets and put my hand on my belly, feeling our son kick. "I'm so sorry," I whispered to him. Morning sickness hit hard at 6 a.m. I stumbled to the bathroom and threw up until there was nothing left. I needed medicine, water, something to settle my stomach. I went to the pharmacy down the street, still wearing yesterday's dress covered in blue confetti. When I swiped our joint debit card at the register, the machine beeped loudly. Declined. I tried again, thinking it was a mistake. Declined. My hands started shaking as I pulled out the credit card. Same result. I called the bank from the parking lot, sitting in my car with the AC blasting. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the teller said in that polite but distant voice they train them to use. "The primary account holder, Beatrice Wells, as trustee of the family funds, has frozen all assets pending a fraud investigation." I hung up without saying goodbye. She hadn't just kicked me out of the house. She was trying to starve me out, force me to disappear completely. I had $12 left in my wallet. I went to work Monday morning, hoping for normalcy, for something familiar to hold on to. My boss called me into his office before I even reached my desk. He looked uncomfortable, shifting papers around without meeting my eyes. "Celine, we've received some disturbing emails regarding your character." My throat tightened. "What kind of emails?" He turned his computer screen toward me. There were 3 messages from an account I didn't recognize, but the language was unmistakable. Beatrice had emailed the partners at my data analysis firm, claiming I was unstable and involved in paternity fraud. She was trying to destroy my career so I couldn't afford a lawyer to fight back. I held my head high, even though I wanted to scream. "It's a personal domestic dispute, sir. My work remains impeccable." He nodded slowly, but I saw the doubt in his eyes. "Take the rest of the week off, paid, let things settle down." I knew what that meant. I was one mistake away from being fired. I drove back to the house that afternoon, my house, the one I had decorated, cleaned, lived in for 3 years. The locks were changed. I stood there staring at the new deadbolt, trying my key over and over, like somehow it would magically work. I banged on the door with both fists. "Julian, open the door!" Beatrice opened it instead, keeping the chain on. Through the crack, I could see Julian sitting on our couch, head in his hands. "Julian doesn't want to see you," she said calmly. "Julian, look at me!" I screamed, not caring if the neighbors heard. "She's lying! That test is fake!" He didn't even look up. He just sat there like a broken statue while his mother controlled everything. Beatrice's smile was thin and victorious. "He's mourning the life he thought he had. Go away, Celine. You're trespassing now." She closed the door in my face, and I heard the deadbolt slide into place with a final, terrible click. 2 days later, a process server cornered me in the office parking lot. He handed me a thick manila envelope, different from the one that had destroyed my life, but just as devastating. The petition for divorce was 40 pages long. Julian was asking for an annulment based on fraud. He wanted no visitation rights for the baby because, and I quote, "it is not of his lineage." Reading those words in legal print broke the last piece of my heart that still loved him. How could he believe his mother over me? How could 5 years of marriage mean so little that a fake piece of paper destroyed everything? If he could throw me away this easily, he wasn't the man I thought he was. I signed for the papers and walked back to my car in a daze. I sat in the driver's seat for an hour, just staring at nothing, feeling our son move inside me. He deserved better than this. We both did. I sat on the floor of my motel room that night with the crumpled DNA test smoothed out in front of me. I worked as a data analyst. I spent my days finding patterns, spotting inconsistencies in numbers and reports. Now I studied this paper like my life depended on it, because it did. The logo of the lab looked generic, too simple. The font for 0% was slightly different pixelation than the rest of the text, like it had been added in Photoshop. And at the bottom, in tiny print almost too small to read, was a website URL. I grabbed my laptop and typed it in with shaking fingers. The page loaded slowly. It wasn't a medical facility. It wasn't even a real laboratory. It was a novelty site called prankyourfriends.com. My heart started racing. I clicked through the site, finding their catalog of fake documents, fake pregnancy tests, fake paternity tests, fake medical results, all designed to look real enough to fool someone who wasn't looking closely. I dug deeper into the website using skills I had learned in college. I found their public invoice ledger poorly secured and easy to access. Beatrice wasn't careful with her digital footprint. She thought she was untouchable. There it was, dated 3 weeks ago. An order from Queen Bee 1965. Item, the breakup special. Cost, $49.99. Customization notes. Make it look real. Name, Julian. Result, 0%. She had bought a fake DNA test for the price of a tank of gas. She had destroyed my marriage, my reputation, and my future with a novelty website and $50. I took screenshots of everything, the invoice, the order details, the customization notes. I saved them in 3 different places, including a cloud drive she couldn't access. This was my ammunition. Now I just needed to figure out how to use it without her destroying the evidence or claiming I had faked the screenshots myself. I needed real proof, something irrefutable that would stand up in court. I went to my OB/GYN, Dr. Evans, the next morning. He had been my doctor since before I got pregnant. He knew me. He knew I wasn't lying. I told him everything, and for the first time in days, tears finally flowed. I couldn't stop them. Dr. Evans was furious. His face turned red as I explained what Beatrice had done. This is causing high-risk stress, Celine. We need to do a non-invasive prenatal paternity test right away. It's court-admissible and completely safe for the baby. But there was a problem. We needed Julian's DNA to compare. Without his cooperation, we were stuck. Then I remembered something. Julian's old toothbrush was still in my travel toiletry bag in the trunk of my car. We had gone to a conference 2 months ago, and I had never unpacked it. Dr. Evans nodded slowly. Bring it in. We'll make this right. I brought the toothbrush to a private forensic lab Dr. Evans recommended. The technician was professional and kind, explaining every step of the process. It cost me my entire savings, $800 I had been hiding in a separate account Beatrice didn't know about. Even that wasn't enough. I had to sell my engagement ring at a pawn shop to cover the rest of the fee. The jeweler offered me half what it was worth. I didn't care. I needed the truth signed, sealed, and stamped by a certified pathologist more than I needed a diamond. I handed over the toothbrush and gave a blood sample, watching the technician label everything with careful precision. "How long?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "5 days," she said. "We're fast-tracking it for you." 5 days felt like forever. 5 days of not knowing if this would work, if the toothbrush had enough DNA, if I could really prove Beatrice was a liar. For 5 days, I went ghost. I blocked Julian's number. I blocked Beatrice. I blocked everyone connected to that family. I focused entirely on my job, working triple shifts to prove my worth and save money for an apartment deposit. My boss watched me carefully, but my work was flawless. I found a small studio apartment on the edge of town. It was empty and cold, with dingy carpet and a kitchen the size of a closet. But it was mine. No one could change the locks on me here. I stopped crying.
The sadness that had consumed me for weeks was hardening into something else. Armor. Steel. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the prosecutor, building a case, collecting evidence, preparing for the moment I could stand in front of everyone who had condemned me and showed them the truth. At night, I lay in my new bed and talked to my son. "We're going to be okay," I whispered. "I promise." The email pinged at midnight on the 5th day. I was sitting on my bed with my laptop, unable to sleep. I opened the PDF attachment with hands that shook so badly I almost dropped the computer. The forensic lab's official letterhead filled the screen. I scrolled past the technical jargon, past the genetic markers and sample numbers until I found the conclusion. Probability of paternity? 99.9998%. Julian was the father. I had known it in my bones, but seeing it confirmed in black and white made me sob with relief. Our son was his. I hadn't lied. I hadn't cheated. I had been telling the truth all along. But as I scrolled further down to the genetic marker breakdown, I noticed something strange. The pathologist had added a note in red text at the bottom. Warning, sample B, father, exhibits rare chromosomal deletion on pair 12. Mother should be tested for carrier status to assess potential health risks.
I called the lab first thing in the morning as soon as they opened. The geneticist on duty explained it to me in terms I could understand. It's a rare hereditary marker found in less than 0.5% of the population. Usually, if the son has it, the mother must be a carrier. It's passed down through maternal lines almost exclusively. I paused, thinking about Beatrice. She was healthy as a horse, never sick, always bragging about her pure, superior genetics at family dinners. What if the father's mother doesn't have it? I asked carefully. The geneticist hesitated. That would be unusual. It could indicate adoption, IVF with a donor egg, or other non-biological maternal connections. My mind raced. I did a background search on Beatrice that afternoon, digging through medical records I probably shouldn't have accessed. No history of this genetic condition, no carrier status, nothing. Then I searched Julian's birth records through the county database. They were sealed. Sealed records almost always meant one thing: adoption. I spent 3 days digging deeper, using every database I had access to through work. I found Julian's original birth certificate, the one filed before his adoption was finalized. His birth mother's name was Casey Thompson. She had died when Julian was 6 months old. Beatrice had adopted him shortly after, sealed the records, and never told him the truth. Julian had no idea he was adopted. Beatrice had hidden it from him his entire life, creating a fantasy where he was her biological son. And now I understood why she hated me so much. She was terrified that Julian would leave her, that he would choose his own family over her. So she destroyed anyone who got too close to him. His ex-girlfriend before me had disappeared suddenly. His college best friend had moved away after some kind of falling out. I wasn't the first person Beatrice had tried to erase from Julian's life. I was just the first one who refused to go quietly. 2 days later, Beatrice reached out. The email appeared in my inbox with the subject line, "Family Closure Dinner." She wrote in her usual formal tone, inviting me to a private gathering at her country club. She framed it as an opportunity for me to sign the papers amicably and receive a small settlement to go away quietly and stop causing problems. She wanted a public surrender. She wanted her wealthy friends to watch me sign away my rights, to see me broken and defeated. The dinner was scheduled for Saturday night, black tie optional, private dining room. I read the email 3 times, feeling that old, familiar anger rising in my chest. Then I replied with one word: accepted. I spent the next 3 days preparing. I contacted a lawyer who agreed to help me for a reduced fee. I organized all my evidence into a presentation. I called the AV manager at the country club and paid him $100 to let me use the projection system. This wasn't going to be Beatrice's show. It was going to be mine. I walked into the private dining room at exactly 7 o'clock. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting warm light over white linens and polished silverware. About 20 of Beatrice's closest friends sat around the long mahogany table, all of them dressed in expensive suits and designer dresses. They looked at me like I was something dirty they had found on their shoe. Julian sat at the head of the table next to his mother, looking pale and miserable. His eyes were sunken, his suit hanging loose like he had lost weight. When I entered, the quiet conversation died immediately. Beatrice stood up, smiling like a shark. "Celine, so glad you decided to do the right thing and stop this charade." She gestured to an empty chair at the far end of the table, as far from Julian as possible. I sat down without saying a word, placing my blazer carefully over the back of the chair. Inside was the remote control I would need later. Beatrice clinked her spoon against her crystal wine glass. The sound rang through the room like a bell. "Everyone, thank you for coming tonight. This marks a new chapter for Julian. We are finally closing the door on dishonesty and moving forward as a family." She slid a thick stack of papers across the polished table toward me, the divorce decree. "Sign them, dear," she said sweetly, her voice dripping with false kindness, "and we'll give you a check for $5,000 to help you handle your situation." She said situation, like my pregnancy was a problem to be solved, not her grandchild growing inside me. The room murmured in agreement. These people didn't know me. They only knew Beatrice's version of events. Julian stared at his empty plate, not looking at anyone. I picked up the papers and pretended to read them, taking my time. Then I set them down carefully. "I have something to say first," I announced, my voice steady and clear. I pulled the remote control from my blazer pocket. Beatrice's eyes narrowed immediately. "What is that?" I had tipped the AV guy earlier to let me hook my laptop into the room's projection system. Now I clicked the button and the huge screen behind Beatrice lit up with the familiar website. "You love facts, Beatrice. You love doing the math. So let's look at the numbers." The screen showed the prankyourfriends.com homepage. Then I clicked again, and the invoice appeared. Order number, date, customer name, Queen Bee 1965. Item, the breakup special. Cost, $49.99. Customization notes, make it look real. Name, Julian. Result, 0%. Beatrice paid $49.99 to fake a DNA test, I said, looking directly at her frozen face. Here is the credit card receipt. Here is the order confirmation. Here is the email she received with the customized document attached. The room exploded. People gasped. Someone dropped their fork. Beatrice's face went from shock to rage in seconds. That's not true. She fabricated those. I'm not done, I said calmly, clicking the remote again. The screen changed to the real forensic lab report. Official letterhead, certified stamps, everything. The conclusion appeared in large text. Julian Vance is the biological father. Probability 99.9998%.
This is from GenePath Forensic Laboratory, court admissible, certified by a pathologist. Your son is the father, Julian. She faked the results because she hates me more than she loves her own grandchild. Julian stood up so fast his chair fell backward. What? Mom? He looked at Beatrice with an expression I had never seen before. Complete betrayal. You bought a fake test? His voice cracked. Beatrice's mask slipped. Julian, sweetheart, I was protecting you. She's not good enough for our family. I had to make you see. But Julian wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at the screen, reading the real results over and over like he couldn't believe what he was seeing.
There's one more thing, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. I clicked the remote a final time. The genetic analysis appeared on the screen, showing Julian's rare chromosomal marker. The real test revealed something else, Beatrice. Julian carries a rare genetic deletion passed down through maternal lines. You don't have it. You can't have it. I turned to face Julian directly. She's not your biological mother, Julian. She adopted you when you were 6 months old and sealed the record so you would never know. She's terrified you'll leave her, so she destroys anyone who gets close to you. I had attached copies of his original birth certificate, the adoption papers, everything. Julian's face went completely white. Beatrice lunged across the table, screaming, "Shut it off! Shut it off now!" Her brother, Julian's uncle, grabbed her arms and held her back. She was crying, makeup running down her face, all pretense of control gone. Julian just stood there, frozen, staring at a woman he thought was his mother but didn't know at all. Julian looked at me with tears streaming down his face. His hands were shaking. "Celine, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know she would do this." He took a step toward me, reaching out. I placed the unsigned divorce papers on the table and pushed them back toward Beatrice. "I know you didn't, Julian, but you chose to believe her over me without question. You threw me out in front of 50 people. You froze our bank accounts. You filed for divorce claiming our son isn't yours." I touched my stomach, feeling our baby move. "We will be fine, but you have a lot to figure out, alone." I picked up my blazer and walked toward the door. Behind me, Beatrice was sobbing, her friends whispering, someone calling the police. My lawyer had already contacted them about the fraud. I didn't look back. I walked out of that country club into the cool night air and finally breathed easy. My phone buzzed. It was Julian. I declined the call. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. But I had won something more important than my marriage. I had won the truth. If you've ever had to fight for what was rightfully yours, you're not alone. Drop a comment and let me know where you're from. And if stories like this mean something to you, hit subscribe.